Now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. The fears and concerns of the Nigerian leadership and stakeholders alike have been confirmed as day one of the planned nationwide hardship protests yesterday turned violent in some parts of the north, claiming 16 lives in a Borno suicide bomber attack and 6 in Niger State. The exercise was characterized by looting and confrontation with security operatives. But as if yielding to regional scripts, the exercise was largely peaceful in the southern part of Nigeria, where the Niger Delta had earlier elected to opt out of the protest for reasons that its interests were not clearly factored into reckoning. However, while the situation in the northern Nigeria had forced the governments of Kano, Borno and Yobe states to declare curfew as part of measures to contain the monstrous situation, the protests had birthed. President Bola Tinubu, in another breath, met with the Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, for what was considered a situation report on Abuja and environs. Interestingly, for Lagos, the commercial nerve center of the country, the last-minute engagement by Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, where he explained the futile efforts of traveling the route of protests, was believed to have contributed to the factors that saved the state from disaster, even though some protesters flouted court orders and held rallies at undesignated places. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Bar Association, NBA, has announced the establishment of pro bono legal support services for protesters amid ongoing nationwide demonstrations. At the same time, the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, has reiterated the importance of maintaining a high level of alertness and professionalism within the force, saying the safety and security of the nation depended on the vigilance, gallantry, and readiness of officers in the police and other security agencies. Right, so many things to talk about this morning, Rufai. We had a live coverage here yesterday. In fact, the morning show was all about speaking to people across different states in Nigeria and then later on just observing the development. The IGP has spoken, Minister Wike has spoken. No word yet from the president. Your take on this story?
So number one, I'd like to commend the peaceful protesters yesterday. Those that went out and protested peacefully as regards the hunger and the situation in the country. That's highly commendable. I also like to condemn the vandals, those heinous, terrible vandals that went out there and were ripping streetlights out in Kano, stealing vegetable oil, doing all sorts, and destroying that ICT center built to be able to emancipate the young people of Kano in technology. That is highly condemnable. And please be warned that when the authorities are hard on you because of this dastardly act, please be warned that they will come hard on you. Also, we must remind the authorities that these people have a right to fair hearing when they go through the legal process. Also, I'd like to commend some governors that came out to speak to the protesters yesterday. I hear Governor Kefas, Governor of Taraba State, Governor Fubara, and Governor Obaseki did come out to speak to them. There might be other governors, so I'm sorry for my omission. And also, kudos to Governor Sanwo-Olu, that came out a day before, pretty much telling people that, please, let's not vandalize things. And kudos to Lagos. I mean, it speaks volumes that actually, as against the Oro or the traditionalists coming out and threatening fire and brimstone and doing all that, and the thugs threatening, then things went peacefully, fairly. I would also like to call on Governor Sanwo-Olu this morning. If you cannot bring to book those that are running Lagospedia Twitter handle, that are now tweeting against an anti-Igbo protest, or in favor of an anti-Igbo protest, which is ethnic baiting and profiling, then we will have failed in stopping the divisive rhetorics going on in Lagos. It is never about tribe, it's never about religion, it's never about race, but it's about every Nigerian. Hunger and suffering does not know your tribe. We are all in this together. People have a right for peaceful process. That Lagospedia Twitter handle, you people find those that tweet incendiary things against you very easily. If you can't find those that are running the Lagospedia Twitter handle and bring them to justice for what was tweeted, then we are not ready.
All right. Dr. Abatim.
Okay, Ayo, you said the government's worst fears were confirmed. The concern of government was not necessarily that people have the right to protest. The concern was that the protest was likely to be hijacked. And indeed, it was hijacked in Abuja, where we saw the police having to, tear gas people. It was hijacked in Daura, Katsina, where we saw, hoodlums destroying properties, setting police vehicles ablaze, and hoodlums also, as you can see on the screen, trying to, even in Abuja, in Katsina, destroy traffic lights. It was in Kano. Okay, that's Kano, where government properties were looted, people were stealing Ndomi television sets, and they went after the Nigerian Communication Commission's building, yet to be commissioned. So heavy vandalization in Kano, Gombe, Bauchi, and Daura, and also in Borno. But in the southern part of the country, it was relatively peaceful. In fact, in Delta State, when some protesters went to Efron in Delta State, the communities chased them away. They said they didn't want any protest. There was no protest in Benue. There was no protest in Ado-Ekiti. There were protests in Lagos, yes, but relatively peaceful also. And also, I think in Imo, for the better part of the Southeast, there was no, violent protest. In the Niger Delta, yes, a few, isolated places, but generally the protesters in the South were, peaceful. But I saw some comic part of it. In Lagos, one man in Ojota decided to strip naked, and he was shouting solidarity forever. How is his solidarity forever? What does it have to do with his nakedness? So, but you had such extreme reactions. In, I think, Abuja, one woman carried a placard saying, I've not been able to get a husband at 37 years because of government. Okay, is it Tinubu that is responsible for, young ladies of 37 years not getting husbands? Well, there was also another side to it. There were pro-government protesters in Gombe. They came out. In Abuja, they came out. And then we had this incident of one person saying, oh, we were given 5,000 naira to protest. In other words, they were paid protesters, which is the nature of the Nigerian society. And he had the temerity to not only disclose, but to also say that he had collected 2,000 naira and he expected to be given back his remaining 3,000 naira. Although if he had known, he would not have joined the pro-government protesters. But he made that ideological point. 17 people, according to Punch newspapers, were killed. 10 in Niger, Borno, Kano, 7 in Kano, and then and in other states, 17 lives were wasted. The IGP, Inspector General of Police, also addressed the press yesterday, and he said he lost some of his officers, and that police vehicles were destroyed, police stations were destroyed, and many police officers were injured. But on the whole, I think that the protesters have made their point. And I think that the leaders of the protest, they should consider, how they can address this hijacking of the process by persons described as hoodlums. During political seasons, these same hoodlums, when there is a protest, are described as able-bodied men or thugs that are used by politicians. But the leaders of the protest should look at that. But in terms of the statement, I think the statement has been made loud and clear. And government, the various governors that spoke, including Fubara, including Governor Sanwo-Olu, including Governor Obaseki, including Governor Doyediri, they've all said government will address the grievances. I hope that will have some impact on the response of the leaders of the protest. But what we call for, on the whole, is peace. Because if we were to calculate the losses yesterday alone, I wish we had Muda Yusuf here, who is in charge of the Center for Private Enterprises. He will be able to tell us, in naira and dollar terms, what this economy lost. And today, the protesters, the coordinator of the Lead Take It Back movement in Abuja, is saying that the protest will continue. I hope good reason will prevail at the end of the day.
Well, yes, what ought to have been a peaceful protest in many parts of the country, unfortunately, was hijacked by certain thugs and people who perhaps were ignorant of the fact that the damaging of state property is actually anti what they are agitating for. You're talking about cutting costs in governance, you're hungry. The money that you have wasted by destroying property is what could have been used or channeled to better use. So it's very unfortunate that we saw those the footage of ignorant people and some thugs destroying property. But those who were protesting, peacefully protesting, did just that. We had little incident reports of violence or hijacking in certain key states that were seen as high risk, Lagos being one of them. The FCT, unfortunately, did record some shootings by the police officers, and that's why I want to go back to that statement by the Inspector General of Police that he had enjoined his officers to act professionally. We saw some of the unprofessional conduct of the police officers on TV, where they were sometimes rough handling some journalists. And let me speak to that. We had some journalists, press people on the streets yesterday who were harassed. In fact, one of our one of the Arise TV buses was broken into, the glasses shattered. Another TV station as well, the same happened to them. We had Ikayode Jayola, photojournalist to Punch newspaper, being arrested and detained. So across the country, journalists didn't quite have or didn't have the protection they ought to have gotten from the police. Rather, in some instances, they were harassed. And there's a statement that's been released by the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, who have, just condemned the attack on the press and the journalists, because we must recognize press freedom as critical for a thriving democracy. But all in all, just to take the example of Lagos State, because Lagos State was probably on red alert in terms of the risk of a hijack following what happened during the NSAS protests. We saw reports from the Lagos Lekki Toll Plaza where they weren't even allowing anyone to gather or people to gather or to speak to people. But we saw the show of leadership, and I'll use that to compare with Abuja, FCT, where the minister, rather than come out, was there pointing fingers and saying, no, he knows who was sponsoring the protest, etc., not acknowledging that a minister of state for police affairs was leading a protest or speaking of a protest pro-government in the same FCT. So it almost seemed like a different set of rules applied to people depending on what side of the divide they stood. And that was something that we shouldn't see. There should be fairness, equity across board, irrespective of where you are, as long as you want to exercise your right to peaceful protest. A number of things to say, but we're hoping that as the days go by, we'll learn lessons. Those who still want to protest peacefully, do so and be protected by the police, and just to enjoin Nigerians to be safe and not be tempted to go out and vandalize. It defeats the purpose.